This video explains export and import procedures. By import-export, we mean the act of outputting AAI data from one instance into an XML file and importing this data into another, presumably remote instance. The capability is cross-platform. You can export from Windows and SQL Server into Unix and an Oracle, and vice versa, so long as the two versions of AAI are the same. The process relies on a number of .bats and .sh files for export and import, and the underlying technology is Java-based. We'll look at the files and how to execute them, and the options for the parameters, AAI server, user, password, objects, and so forth. We'll run through the entire procedure visually and break down some of the steps to make sure that they're understood. Finally, you may be faced with some sort of faulty behavior when running one of the batch files. We'll show you some of the workarounds, what to look for when they don't work, and the logs you can use to troubleshoot. The idea is quite simple. We have two instances of AAI which can be cross-platform. Your source AAI can be hosted on Windows with a SQL Server database, and the target can be Unix with Oracle or any other permutation. We've configured these AAI instances so they're connected to the same schedulers. This capability serves several purposes, such as a migration of AAI from Windows to Unix. We rely on the JBoss app server's EJB interfaces to extract all or part of the data from the source database and output it to an XML file. For this, we use the JAWS export batch file. We then send the file to the remote instance and execute a JAWS import using the same file. The data is uploaded to the target AAI instance. The process extracts all data, meaning job streams which are associated to an existing scheduler, the schedulers themselves, users, user profiles, business areas, and reports. We rely on two batch files found in the import-export directory under the main file system. They're called JAWS export for exporting from the source AAI server and JAWS import for importing into the target. Note that both AAI instances need to be up and running. They also have to be of the same version. You have the option of running these batch commands from separate systems. They don't have to be the AAI hosts because we reference the AAI host and port as an option. These batch commands have options that are either object or system-based. Some are required, like the AAI system and the admin user. We show these options throughout the entire video. Depending on the type of scheduler, you'll be able to export the scheduler definition as well. This works well for API-based integrations like Autosys, but isn't always possible for universal schedulers like Atomic, which use the REST API. In these types of situations, it's best to recreate the scheduler in the target web interface and use an option to force the importing of job streams without associated schedulers. Here are the contents of the import-export/bin directory. We have two export files, one for each platform, two import files, and two environment files. There's also a file we can use to pre-configure options, which we can then source. This means we don't have to specify each option individually. Let's look at one of the files, the JAWS export.bats. It sets environment variables for JAWS_migrate, which is the bin directory, and JAWS_migrate_class path, which references the directories containing Java libraries, law configuration, and the import-export config files. Then it executes the JAWS export. You also have the migration_parms properties file. You can enter all the import-export parameters, and then use this file to run the procedure. Note that Java 8 has to be available for this to work, and we recommend avoiding OpenJDK. Java Home needs to be defined in your system variables or etc profile. Here are the options to use with the batch files. First, let's start with exporting, which only has system options. Since you export everything, you cannot be selective. -S is for the source AAI server and ports. -U is for the admin user. -P is for the admin password. Use -T if you're working over HTTPS, -D if you're exporting using the file, and -E for the name and location of the export file. Importing has two types of options. First, objects and the uppercase options. -B forces the import of business areas. -D sets a date filter, say you wanted to import data from the last year only. -J forces the import of job streams. We'll use this option during the demo. Job streams have a logical map to the scheduler, which we won't be able to import since our scheduler is REST API-based Atomic, meaning the scheduler cannot be imported. Without the linked scheduler, job streams will not get imported. -J supersedes this limitation and forces the job stream import. -R imports reports. "-S is used to restrict the import for specific schedulers, and "-U imports user profiles. Let's look at the lowercase options. For job streams and reports, we have lowercase equivalents. You can selectively import certain job streams and reports by name instead of everything. Note the "-P option, which we use to import individual user profiles. You might expect a lowercase u, but that's not what we use. We use uppercase P instead. The system options are the same as for exporting. We've provided some examples. This exports all data from AAI on a host called AAI Win. This does the same, but over HTTPS. This exports using parameters provided by a file called parms.properties. This imports everything to that host from the same file. This forces the import of job streams with the "-J option, presumably because the scheduler cannot be imported. This imports job streams, but only those associated with Scheduler Atomic. This imports job streams created after June 5th, 2020. The documentation has many more examples of commands, and we recommend looking them up. If you run into any problems, you can always check the log called datamigration.log, found under jboss/standalone/log. Let's move on to the demo. We start with a source Windows AAI that contains some data that we want to export to a new Unix AAI. We have some job streams, some business areas, some users, and a defined atomic scheduler. We have a DOS prompt in the top part of the screen and the directory in which we want to generate the export file, which is ctemp. This is the command, jaws export.bat, the host, the admin user, password, and export file. We can simply issue the Java command manually. We just have to make sure that our two variables jaws_migrate and jaws_migrate_classpath were defined when we attempted to run the script. Let's check. The variable is set. Let's execute the Java command manually. This is the basic command we copied from the JAWS export file. We also need to provide the options. The command executes. The export.xml file is there. Let's take a look at it. First, we have some database parameters. Then we have individual records for business areas, referred to as business domains in the file. This has all the properties associated with the BA. Below that, we have records for the schedulers. Finally, we have exported records for each job stream. We start with a freshly installed new AAI server on Unix. Business areas and job stream lists are empty. Let's head to a term window and execute the import command. We've placed the export file in a directory called /home/AAI/documents. Remember that if you're using the root account to move your file, it might not have the appropriate privileges for an import. We delete the data migration log. When we perform the import, a new log will be written and we'll be able to identify any problem much faster. The scheduler was not imported, which means that the job streams, which are mapped to a schedule in the database, will not be imported either. We can check this in the log. We did not import job streams, although the business areas did get imported. We have the scheduler error followed by a bunch of Java messages. The way around this is to create the schedule in the target AAI server and then force the import of the job streams with the -J option.